Pranks and mild vandalism are to be expected on the night before Halloween, but no one would anticipate an actual murder, especially not in the small town of Greenwich, Connecticut. On Halloween 1975, Martha Moxley's body was found partially concealed by pine trees in her backyard, beaten and stabbed. Belhaven in Greenwich, Connecticut has been haunted by her death ever since. The Moxley family lived in a gated community of estates in Greenwich on the Connecticut coast, a wealthy New York suburb. Martha Moxley's father, a partner in a large accounting firm, had moved the family to Greenwich only about 18 months before. Martha, a high school sophomore, had just tried out for the cheerleading squad. Her classmates had voted her the girl with the, quote, best personality. For many teens, the move may have been an awkward adjustment. However, Martha thrived. Classmates were drawn to her vivacious personality and self-confidence. After just 9 months in town, she was voted the most popular girl at Western Junior High School. Martha was the kind of person who had everything in the world going for her. She was friendly, she was athletic, and she was talented. Everything seemed to come very easily to Martha, her brother John recalled. She was very easy to get along with, upbeat, friendly, the kind of kid you'd like to be around. She made more friends in her short time in Greenwich than many people make their whole life, her eulogy noted. Despite her popularity, John recalled Martha was family-oriented and didn't mind spending time in the family's huge home, sketching in her arts notebook or playing with her cat, Tiger. But she had a wilder side as well, occasionally missing her curfew, drinking a beer, and smoking. In the summer of 1975, Martha spent many days at Belhaven Club, swimming and playing tennis. The teens she socialized with around the pool and tennis court were different than her other friends. The children of the exclusive club generally went to private academies and boarding schools. Among the people she hung out with that summer were the Skakels boys, Michael, 15, and Tommy, 17. The Skakels were cousins of the Kennedys through the marriage of Ethel Skakel and Robert F. Kennedy. It is unclear how much time Martha spent with the Skakels boys, but in a letter she wrote to a friend that summer, she said Tommy had hit on her, but she wasn't interested. Tragically, Martha went missing on the night of October 30th, 1975, after a night out with friends, pulling pranks as many teens would. At approximately 8:45 p.m., Martha made her last stop at the Skakel home to visit Michael and Tommy. As Tommy and Martha chatted in the dark, several of the Skakel siblings and a cousin, James Tarrant, were piling into a car to drive to James's home to hang out with the rest of the cousins. They invited Martha, but she declined. According to the Skakels, they stayed at the Tarrants for about an hour, watching Monty Python Flying Circus, and returned to their home around 11 p.m. Tommy went home and watched TV. That was the last time Martha was seen. Martha Moxley was bludgeoned with a golf club and stabbed with its broken shaft as she approached her house sometime after 9 p.m. It was not until afternoon the next day on Halloween that Martha's body was found by Sheila McGuire, another neighbor and classmate who is the daughter of Thomas M. McGuire, vice president of a pharmaceutical company. Investigators say Martha's body had been dragged through the high grass in her family's backyard and left under a pine tree. The assailant attacked Martha so savagely the club's metal shaft snapped. It was then driven through her neck. Martha's pants and underwear had been pulled down around her ankles, but there was no signs of SA. The cause of her death wasn't the beating from the club itself, but rather the shaft that penetrated through her neck. Investigators believe that Martha was hit in the head from behind as she walked up the driveway to her home on the evening of October 30th, 1975. Her body was then dragged to her backyard. Whoever did it knew where to put her body, under the pine tree. They believe she was killed between 9:30 p.m. and 10 p.m. This was such a narrow time, but investigators believe it was enough time for Tommy, who was the last person to see her. Although he did have an alibi, Tommy did make out with her before she left, but she told him she had a curfew. Could this have set him off? What would the motive be? Martha Moxley had been beaten and stabbed with a Tony Penna golf club. Police later found a matching golf club from the same set on the Skakel property. Martha Moxley recorded some interactions with the Skakels in her diary that I find very interesting. In one entry, she wrote about 17-year-old Tommy. When driving in Tom's car and I was practically sitting on Tom's lap, he kept putting his hand on my knee. In another entry, she was particularly concerned with Michael's behavior. The month before her death, on September 19, Martha wrote, "Michael was so totally out of it that he was being a real asshole. I really have to stop going over there." So in this diary entry, she continues to say that Michael approached her and confronted her about her behavior with Tommy, saying that she was leading him on. So there was some sort of argument between them, and she too said that she felt that Michael was leading a friend of hers on. So she seems noticeably upset by this and says that she no longer thinks she should go over to their house. So on the night of her disappearance, Helen, who lives next door and across the street from the Moxleys, was the last to leave except for Martha. After 20 minutes or close to 9:30, Martha said goodnight. Michael Skakel was quoted by news reporters the day after the murder as saying that he saw his brother Tommy talking to her on their lawn shortly before she left. Now, the distance to the Moxley home is 200 yards, but as you know, she never made it. She was struck down about halfway on a leaf-covered section of her own lawn. Since Martha was last seen with the Skakels, police looked to them for accounts of what occurred that night. Michael Skakel told police that at 9:30 he left Martha and Tommy to go to his cousin's, and then he returned home around 11 p.m. and went straight to bed. Tommy told investigators Martha went home shortly after Michael left around 9:30 p.m. Ken Littleton, the Skakel family tutor, said Tommy was watching TV with him around 10 p.m. He noticed nothing unusual about Tommy. Ken had arrived at the house only hours shortly. Now, Tommy said he went to his room to work on a school report on Abraham Lincoln. However, his teachers denied ever giving him this assignment. The seclusion of Belhaven is reinforced by 3 private police guard posts on 2 main access roads and barricades that extend into the streets to impede unfamiliar traffic. So it would be highly unlikely for a stranger to gain access. Eventually, Tommy and the Skakels' live-in tutor Kenneth Littleton are interviewed and given lie detector tests. Tommy does pass, while police note that Littleton was not truthful in answering the key questions. In 1991, Martha Moxley's case was reopened after a rumor that another Kennedy family member, William Smith Kennedy, may have been involved in the murder. The rumor was debunked, but the case was back in the spotlight. Now Michael Skakel became a prime suspect. Now, strangely, this was prompted by Rushton Skakel, who had hired a private investigator to clear his family name. He was hoping that it would cast suspicion on other suspects, namely the former suspect Ken Littleton. However, his plan completely backfired. The 2 private investigators involved were Jimmy Murphy, a former FBI agent, and his assistant, Willis Billy Krebs, a former NYPD lieutenant. When the 2 men interviewed Tom and Michael Skakel about their activities on the night of Martha's murder, it turned out both boys had lied to the police. Initially, Tom said that he last saw Martha outside at 9:30 p.m., but actually it was closer to 10 p.m. Also, before Tom went back inside, he and Martha engaged in mutual masturbation outside his home. According to Krebs, Tom began to cry as he admitted this, but his lawyer cut him off before any more could be said. Michael, on the other hand, told investigators that he did not go to bed when he arrived home from his cousin's around 11 p.m. He had actually climbed a tree outside Martha's bedroom window and masturbated. The tree Michael described, however, was not outside Martha's window. It was actually the tree right above where Martha's body had been discovered. 2 of Michael's former classmates, John D. Higgins and Gregory Coleman, also testified. John said that Michael disclosed to him he had fragmented memories of the crime, and Higgins testified Michael once told him, quote, "I am going to get away with murder. I am a Kennedy." On January 19, 2000, Michael Skakel, 39, was charged with murder as a minor because he was 15 at the time of the October 1975 killing. On March 15, 2000, Michael Skakel appears in court to face the charge that he murdered Martha Moxley. After the hearing concluded, Michael walked to the railing by the first row of spectators and stood face to face with Martha's mother, Dorothy. "I feel your pain," he said, looking her right in the eyes, "but you've got the wrong guy. In 2002, Michael Skakel was found guilty of murdering Martha Moxley and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. His conviction was vacated by the Connecticut Supreme Court in 2018 after a series of appeals. On November 2024, Michael sued the lead police investigator in the case, Frank Garr, as well as the town of Greenwich for alleged malicious prosecution and civil rights violations. Martha's mother, Dorothy, fought for decades to bring her teenage daughter's killer to justice, but sadly she passed away December 26, 2024. She was 92.